This is not a video about becoming some secretive person who lies about your finances, and it is not about paranoia or distrust of the people you love. It is about something much more specific: the precise mechanism by which sharing information about your money with people who did not earn that information alongside you creates costs you will never receive an invoice for. There are exactly 4 places where financial visibility works against you, and most people are exposed to all 4 without ever being told that the protection is free, simple, and takes less than 1 behavioral change to implement. And the people who currently have the most money almost universally made that change, whether they knew it or not. And before we get into the 4 reasons, there is one idea underneath all of them that explains why this keeps surprising people. Money is never neutral information. It is always stored and always used, not necessarily maliciously, usually without the person even consciously deciding to use it. But financial information about you changes how every person who holds it relates to you and to every transaction they have with you. And it does this permanently. You cannot unshare something once it is shared, and the compounding cost of that visibility is the thing this video is about. Reason 1. Your relationships develop a texture you did not choose. The people who matter most to you are also the people who are most likely to let financial information change how they see you, and the change is almost never deliberate and almost always real. Thomas Stanley, who spent more than 2 decades studying actual millionaire behavior in America, found something that keeps showing up across every income bracket. The people who build the most wealth maintain strong relationships with their actual peer group, rather than with people calibrated to their financial position. And the mechanism is direct. When the people around you know your financial position, they begin unconsciously setting expectations based on it. Not about gifts or loans explicitly, but about the texture of shared decisions. Whose judgment gets deferred to? Whose suggestion carries more weight? Who gets asked for advice, and who gets the look when they order modestly at a dinner? The diagnostic question is specific. In the last year, has anyone in your life made a decision about what to suggest or how to behave based on what they think you earn? If you have to think about it, the answer is almost certainly yes. What financial invisibility does is keep your relationships calibrated to who you actually are, rather than to the number people have associated with you. And the difference over a decade of relationships is significant in ways that only become visible when you compare people who maintained that invisibility against people who didn't. Reason 2. Every transaction you enter carries a premium you cannot negotiate around. The most financially significant cost of visibility is also the one that operates most quietly and is almost never named. The person quoting your renovation already knows what neighborhood you live in and what the house looks like. The financial advisor you are meeting with already has some signal of your approximate assets. The contractor who has done work for your neighbor has a number in mind before you even ask for a quote. And research on pricing behavior in service industries shows consistent and documented patterns where estimated ability to pay is factored into initial quotes, sometimes consciously, sometimes not. But the direction is always the same. Warren Buffett spent decades being photographed at a Dairy Queen in Omaha, driving a modest car, and living in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,000. Not because he was humble in the conventional sense, but because he understood that operating below your financial signature in every transaction is a negotiating advantage that compounds across every transaction you ever have. The contractor who thinks you are stretched gives you a different number than the contractor who thinks you are flush. And over a lifetime of transactions, the difference is not small. And if the texture of relationships reframe and the transaction pricing mechanism together just changed something about how you think about financial visibility, the like button is right there. It means the next video gets made, and I get to keep making these arguments as precisely as I can. Reason 3, the people who care about you will want things from you that are uncomfortable to decline. Generosity is genuinely good, but generosity that is demanded rather than chosen is a different thing. And the visibility of your financial position is what converts the first into the second. The mechanism here is not that the people who love you are mercenary. It is that the human brain has a well-documented tendency to calibrate what a fair ask looks like based on available information. And when the people closest to you know your financial position, they recalibrate what a reasonable request looks like. not because they are calculating this, but because this is how brains process social information. The specific cost is not the requests themselves, it is the discomfort of declining them. And the discomfort of declining them is the cost of being visible. Because if nobody knew your position, no adjustment would have been made, and the request would either not have been made or would have been made at a scale that felt proportionate to what they actually knew about you. The protection is not to become unavailable to the people you love. The protection is to maintain your own agency about how and when and whether you extend your resources, rather than having that decision made for you by information you gave away before you understood its cost. Reason 4. Your own spending behavior changes in ways that quietly work against you. This is the reason nobody talks about because it requires the most honesty to name. The visibility of wealth changes not just how other people behave around you, but how you behave around yourself. Psychologists who study conspicuous consumption have documented what they call social proof in reverse. When your financial position becomes part of your social identity, you become more likely to make spending decisions that maintain that identity and less likely to make decisions that contradict it. Not because you consciously decide to do this, but because the identity has become attached to visible signals, and visible signals require maintenance. The person who has quietly told everyone they are doing well financially is the same person who finds it difficult to order modestly at a dinner or drive the older car when the newer one is in reach, not because they want to spend the money, but because the identity now requires the signal. And the compounding financial cost of maintaining signals that were established by information you shared early before you understood the mechanism is one of the most underestimated drains on wealth accumulation in the entire personal finance space. The person who shared nothing maintains full agency over every single one of their signals. They can drive whatever they want, live wherever they want, spend on whatever actually matters to them, and decline whatever does not, without a social identity requiring the maintenance spending that keeps everything consistent. And now here is the practical piece. What does financial invisibility actually look like in daily life? It looks like knowing the difference between money that you keep and money that you discuss. It looks like declining to answer the specific numbers version of any question while answering the category version. If someone asks how your year went financially, the correct answer is always something warm and specific that does not include any number that can be used to construct an estimate. It was really good. I feel good about where things are headed. Closes the loop the other person opened without handing them the information they could store and use. It looks like calibrating your visible signals intentionally rather than accidentally. Not driving the cheapest possible car as some performance of modesty, but choosing your visible signals the way any person who has thought clearly about the costs of visibility would choose them, based on what they actually want, not on what maintains the identity that visibility created. It looks like being genuinely generous with the people you love on your own timeline, rather than on the timeline that was imposed by sharing your position. Because generosity from agency is different from generosity from obligation, and the people who receive it can feel the difference. The underlying idea across all 4 reasons is the same, and it is worth stating once. Money is never neutral information, and the cost of giving it away is always paid, usually over years, usually in ways that do not arrive as invoices, usually in a direction that is the opposite of what sharing the information was supposed to produce. The people who accumulate the most of it almost universally figured this out. Some of them figured it out by accident, and some of them figured it out the hard way, but the pattern holds regardless. Wealth that is visible is wealth that is already working against itself, and the protection is simply to stop making it visible before you understand the cost of doing so. And that cost is the thing that most financial content never bothers to explain. Not because it is complicated, but because explaining it clearly requires you to say something uncomfortable about human nature that most content prefers to leave unexamined. I make these videos because I find it genuinely frustrating that the most practical insights about how money actually operates in real human relationships are the ones nobody explains in plain language. Subscribe so I can keep being frustrated about that on your behalf. The video on your screen right now might be more helpful for you, so click and watch.